Well, your summer barbecue might be getting more expensive. The price of beef is skyrocketing to a record high.
Meat prices have skyrocketed and they're getting out of control, guys. When we talk about $50, and look at that, it's $24 per pound.
7 of the most common meats in America are doubling in price within just a few weeks. And no, this isn't speculation, it's happening right now. At Walmart, Costco, Kroger, and just about every grocery store working Americans rely on, ground beef, chicken, breast pork, chops, bacon, steak. These used to be staples at the dinner table. Now they're becoming a heavy hit on your grocery bill. Price hikes anywhere from 40% to over 100% depending on the cut. And no, it's not just inflation or supply issues. The real culprit. A fresh wave of tariffs reimposed by the Trump administration in 2025 on the global meat supply chain. They're calling it protecting American farmers. But in reality, it's regular folks. The very people who once supported these policies believing they'd make America stronger, who are now paying the price week after week. Have you been cutting back on meat? Noticed your usual pack of bacon suddenly costs half as much more? If so, you're not alone. And now's the time to look at the 7 types of meat seeing the biggest price jumps, and why even the Trump administration can no longer contain the fallout of its own decisions. Number 1. Kirkland ground beef. Picture yourself standing in front of the frozen meat section at Costco. You spot the familiar red and white packaging of Kirkland ground beef. For millions of American families, that label used to be a lifesaver, an affordable go-to for home-cooked meals. A single pack could stretch across 3 or 4 dinners. Convenient, budget-friendly. But now your eyes catch the price tag, and you blink twice to make sure you're not seeing things. Yes, the price of Kirkland ground beef has nearly doubled in just the past few months. What used to cost between $35 and $40 for a 5-pound pack is now pushing past $65 at many Costco locations. For families living paycheck to paycheck, that's not just a slight price adjustment. It's a direct hit to the monthly budget. What makes this even more striking is that Kirkland ground beef isn't some luxury item. It's a staple product designed for the average American consumer, especially working-class households. It's the backbone of classic meals like burgers, spaghetti, meatloaf, and homemade tacos. There's a reason ground beef accounts for nearly 50% of all beef consumption in the US, according to data from the Beef Checkoff program. So what's driving the spike in prices? Some blame inflation or higher operational costs, but the truth goes deeper. In early 2025, the Trump administration reinstated and expanded tariffs on imported meat from Mexico, Canada, and Australia. These 3 countries have long been the biggest suppliers of affordable ground beef to the US market, and it didn't stop at import taxes. The new tariffs pushed foreign exporters to pivot to other markets, places where they wouldn't face steep duties. As a result, the US isn't just seeing less imported beef. It also can't ramp up domestic production quickly enough with the country's cattle herd now at its lowest level in nearly 70 years, according to the USDA. As supply shrinks and input costs rise, it's consumers who take the first punch. Kirkland, as Costco's private label, hasn't been immune to this spiral. To preserve profit margins in an increasingly fragile supply chain, they've had no choice but to raise retail prices. That's led to an uncomfortable irony. A brand once known for affordability and reliability among working families is now a symbol of price volatility. No longer the always-in-the-fridge option, Kirkland ground beef is forcing many households to switch to cheaper alternatives. Canned beans, instant noodles, or meatless meals. Do you remember the last time you bought a pack of Kirkland ground beef for under $40? Does it feel like one more thing slipping out of reach in today's economy? If so, you're far from alone. Millions are asking the same question. Why are we the ones paying the price for a policy that was supposed to protect America? Number 2. Generic ground beef. Do you remember those early week dinners when a simple pack of ground beef from Walmart came to the rescue? It used to be the easiest choice. No fuss, no deals to chase. Just grab it, pay, and head home. No second thoughts. But by 2025, that quiet confidence is starting to fade. The average price of store-brand ground beef hit a record $6.12 per pound in June, up from $5.47 the same time last year. It's a modest jump, sure, but enough to make even the most affordable protein feel like a decision worth pausing over. And the numbers don't tell the whole story. What matters more is this: generic ground beef makes up nearly 50% of all retail beef sold in the US, according to data from major food retail chains. When something that used to be a no-brainer now requires a mental calculation, you know something's off. So, what's pushing this plain unbranded product into the spotlight of economic uncertainty? It's not a sudden shortage, but the weight of policy decisions closing in. In 2025, the US ramped up import tariffs on beef from Mexico, Canada, and Australia. That disruption in the supply chain hit hard, especially for producers who don't rely solely on domestic sources. On top of that, as reported by the Wall Street Journal, poultry sales have been propping up meat industry giants like Tyson, thanks to chicken still holding steady around $4 per pound, compared to over $6 for ground beef. That signals one thing: consumers are already shifting their buying habits. Cheaper proteins are becoming the fallback, making generic ground beef harder to move off the shelf. And here's the part no one really says out loud: this change strikes at the core of something deeper. The belief that I can take care of my family with the basics. When even ground beef feels like a splurge, it hits a place beyond budgeting. It tugs at the quiet sense of security people used to have when shopping for everyday essentials. There's a bitter irony here. The tariffs introduced in the name of protecting domestic meat producers are now shaking the trust of everyday consumers. Who's actually benefiting? Are farmers selling more? Are small-scale ranchers making gains? Or are the big corporations cashing in? The answer isn't clear. Have you found yourself buying less ground beef lately? Skipping tacos or meatballs just to save a few bucks? If so, you're not alone. You're part of a shifting tide in American consumption, one that says more than numbers ever could. Number 3, chicken breast. Remember when boneless, skinless chicken breasts, brands like Tyson or Perdue, were a reliable staple in your weekly grocery haul? They were a quiet reassurance. At least there was still one go-to meat you could count on for being affordable and easy to cook. But in June 2025, numbers from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics showed the average price for boneless, skinless chicken breast hitting $4.24 per pound, climbing month after month from $4.08 at the start of the year to $4.18, and now to $4.24. The increases may look small on paper, but week after week they add up, and your wallet can feel it. And it's not just the price, it's the slow erosion of a sense of security. According to a recent report, wholesale chicken breast prices reached $1.91 per pound, nearly double the 93 cents from the same time last year. Imagine that, almost a 100% increase, yet shoppers are still paying the price for what once felt like the most dependable protein. On top of that, USDA data shows whole bird prices are now at record highs, averaging $2.09 per pound. That shift is enough to throw off entire meal plans. Every substitution is getting more expensive, forcing families to rethink their grocery lists. So what's breaking the system? It's not just tariffs. In 2025, the supply of processed chicken, including the chicken breasts sold in stores, was hit hard by an avian flu outbreak, which reduced the number of healthy birds available for slaughter. While the outbreak wasn't as severe as previous ones, it still left behind costly biosecurity and culling requirements. Meanwhile, poultry production hasn't rebounded fast enough. Flock sizes that were cut back haven't fully recovered, and with feed prices climbing, wholesale costs for chicken breasts keep rising, forcing retailers to pass those increases on to consumers. You might remember when several Asian countries raised tariffs on U.S. chicken exports. That slowed down international shipments and flooded more product back into the domestic market. It sounded like it might help, but instead it skewed supply and demand at home. Pair that with the ongoing shift from beef to chicken as the cheaper protein, and you get even more pressure on chicken breast prices. This isn't just about rising costs. It's about shrinking options. In many households, chicken breast used to be the safe protein to build meals around. But by 2025, even that has become fragile. Some families are switching to chicken thighs because they're cheaper. Others are turning to non-meat proteins like canned beans, eggs, or canned fish. Have you ever had to change something you didn't want to, just because the stable choice was no longer there? If you've caught yourself downsizing, compromising on quality, or choosing less healthy cuts just to stay on budget, then you're seeing the real-world effects of the very tariffs you may have once supported. Number 4, Kirkland Bacon. Have you noticed how bacon, once a weekend ritual for many, is no longer something you casually toss into the cart? That box of Kirkland Bacon from Costco, the one that used to bring a little spark of joy to the home cook, now comes with a much heavier presence on the receipt. The sight of that golden, sizzling bacon used to signal the start of a good day. Now it's a reminder of a cost that can't be ignored, especially with budgets getting tighter. According to a US-based price tracking site, a pack of Kirkland fully cooked bacon used to run about $11.49. In 2025, that same product is showing up with a new price tag, $18.12. That's nearly double in a single year. It's not just a number that makes you blink twice. It signals a deeper shift in how we consume. From a shopper's perspective, this price hike isn't just about spending a few extra bucks each month. It highlights the growing connection between what ends up on the family table and far-reaching government policy. Kirkland Bacon, known for its consistency, generous size, and that comforting price that started with a 1, used to be proof that your family could still enjoy a morning treat without busting the budget. Now it requires second thoughts. And while you might opt for other healthy options instead, the question becomes, have you quietly cut back on something familiar? Without even realizing it, the issue isn't a sudden shortage of domestic pork. It's the ripple effect of new tariffs on imported meat from Canada and Mexico, two major suppliers of raw materials for processed products like bacon. When input costs spike, producers have to raise their prices just to stay afloat. And Costco, which by internal policy limits Kirkland product markups to no more than 15%, still sees those final prices jump sharply because the baseline cost of pork has surged. Do you remember those casual weekend conversations at the breakfast table? Let's do bacon, eggs, and toast on Saturday. It used to be almost automatic. No big planning required. But now if you're hesitating and asking yourself, should we even add bacon to the cart this week? Something's changed. That small moment reflects something much bigger, an economy increasingly shaped by high-level policy decisions with home cooks and everyday shoppers bearing the brunt. Have you noticed a quiet emptiness in your weekend grocery cart? Caught yourself trimming out the little things that once made a meal feel special? If you've started cutting back on breakfast bacon, it's saying something deeper about how the effects of macroeconomic decisions are hitting home kitchens more directly and more forcefully than you might think. Number 5. Ribeye steak. Picture this. It's the weekend, the grill is fired up, and you lay down a thick ribeye steak. The kind of cut that practically says, you've earned this. Ribeye has never needed to be an everyday thing, but when you wanted it, you knew it was within reach. A quiet declaration of family joy. Now that moment feels different. According to the U.S. Labor Department's CPI data, the average price of all raw steaks, including ribeye, rose to $11.49 per pound in June 2025, up nearly 50 cents from the previous month. That's an 8% increase from a year ago. And while that may not sound massive, it hits squarely at the heart of that "let's do ribeye this weekend" feeling, with a subtle but unmistakable sting of hesitation. From another angle, wholesale market data shows choice-grade ribeye has surged from $9.75 per pound in April 2024 to $14.18 in the same month of 2025. This isn't just a special weekend treat anymore. Among all the little joys of life, it's becoming the one that makes you say, just this once. Ribeye has always been in a class of its own. That perfect marbling, its fat content, its tenderness. It's a statement. It's a celebration. It marks a moment. So when ribeye becomes something you have to think twice about adding to your cart, that means the joy you deserve is starting to feel negotiable. But this price hike isn't just about a shortage of cattle. It's rooted in trade policy. In early 2025, new tariffs were slapped directly on beef imports from Mexico, Canada, and with looming threats extended toward Brazil. This wasn't just a tap on the market, it was a squeeze on the high-end meat sector. Ribeye was the first target in its sights. Retail prices soared while the U.S. cattle herd remained at its lowest point since 1951. Somewhere between farm and dinner table, the supply chain lost a piece. And you're the one feeling it. When you drop that ribeye into a hot skillet, it's not just sizzling in oil, it's melting away with the comfort of an easy, indulgent meal. Remember when ribeye was for guests? When saying we can't afford steak was just an expression? Now ribeye isn't about company, it's about you. Asking yourself if one splurge this weekend is still worth it. That question carries more than financial weight. It's about the feeling of whether or not you deserve that little moment of reward. You might not feel angry, but you can feel that quiet emotional pinch, even when the wallet isn't completely empty. The strange part. This was a policy designed to protect the domestic cattle industry. Yet somehow it's eroding the very trust that made people believe it was worth it. Like the fat cap melting on a hot ribeye, that confidence is slowly cooking away. Have you found yourself switching to imported sirloin or strip loin instead of ribeye? That's not just frugality. It's a quiet shift in mindset. You're no longer choosing based on joy. You're choosing based on what's possible. Number 6. Pork chops. When you pass by the meat section at Costco or Kroger, there's one cut you never skip over: pork chops. Thick cut, still tender, and once so reliably priced that you didn't even question it. You just grabbed it for the kids for a weeknight meal for the family table. But in 2025, that no-brainer started to raise some eyebrows. According to CPI data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average price for a pound of pork chops in American cities hit $4.264 in June, up slightly from the previous month, but still sitting near the top of its yearly range. It's not a shock jump like we've seen with beef, but it makes you pause. If even an everyday cut like pork chops is going up, what's happening to everything else? In the long view, pork chop prices have had a memorable climb. From 1965 to 2025, the price rose by 491.61%. From $20 to over $118 for the same quantity of meat adjusted for inflation. That number isn't meant to overwhelm you, but to show that pork, once considered the most accessible protein, has been slowly drifting away from normal. You might think, sure, pork chops are going up, but they're still cheaper than steak. True. But in the kitchen, the impact hits differently. When even your traditional weeknight dinner needs a little more gas money just to afford pork chops, it starts to stir up a quiet question. Am I still allowed to have pork chops every week? And the reason isn't just a matter of pig farm shortages or disease outbreaks. According to USDA forecasts, U.S. domestic pork production is only expected to grow by 0.9% in 2025, even as total meat production grows more than 2%. That uneven growth in the supply chain is pushing pork chop prices higher, turning them from an automatic buy into a more calculated choice. Meanwhile, according to Pork Checkoff, pork consumption is expected to increase slightly this year, even with tight supply and rising prices. That suggests the market is shifting toward a mindset of expensive, but still in demand. You might not want to pay more, but unless you're switching to pork pho or another alternative, you still kind of have to. You used to count on pork chops as a safe bet, for everything from backyard BBQs to sticky caramelized braises. When they stop being an easy go-to, something quiet slips away from the family dinner. That tender bite, the savory juices, the way a shared meal pulls everyone a little closer. Have you ever asked yourself if you could go without pork chops for a few weeks? Or swap them out for cheaper ground meat? That's not just a money-saving move. That's a sign you're beginning to negotiate your quiet joys. And when that happens, no matter how noble the goal behind food tariffs might be, like protecting local farming, it begins to miss its ultimate purpose, ensuring safe, affordable, trustworthy food choices for everyone. Number 7. Frozen shrimp. Shrimp cocktail. Simple, satisfying, and just fancy enough to make a weeknight dinner feel a little more special. But in 2025, even this familiar frozen favorite is giving shoppers pause in the seafood aisle. Let's start with the numbers. U.S. imports of frozen shrimp rose 11% in value during the first half of 2025, reaching roughly $2.84 billion, compared to the same period last year. Volume only increased by 2%, meaning the average price per pound is climbing, and fast. Earlier this year, several grocery chains reported sudden price hikes. One Walmart employee wrote on Reddit that a bag of pre-cooked shrimp jumped from $4.98 to $9.99 overnight, more than a 100% increase. No warning, no explanation. Just a sharp price shock that stripped away the ease of a once affordable dinner. Shrimp has never been the cheapest item in the freezer, but it used to feel like an attainable luxury, something middle-class families could still justify. Now you can practically feel that fresh moment slipping away. And that's not just disappointing. It leaves you wondering where to go to find good food that doesn't hurt your wallet. Part of what's driving this change, tariffs. President Trump imposed a 25% tariff on shrimp imported from India, a major supplier accounting for more than a third of all U.S. shrimp imports. That's throttled the flow of cheap Asian shrimp and pushed costs straight down the line to the end consumer. One seafood trade publication estimates the industry could take a $1 billion hit. And it's the shopper who's standing at the very end of that expensive domino effect. On the flip side, the domestic shrimping industry in Louisiana sees these tariffs as a temporary lifeline. But as an economist at Duke University warned, unless the U.S. improves how it processes and preserves local shrimp, it won't be long before shrimp becomes a full-blown luxury item. Think about it. When a once accessible seafood becomes something you hesitate to buy, it's a quiet but powerful sign that something's changed. Are families now opting for canned fish or shelf-stable proteins instead of frozen shrimp? That's not just about taste. It's about the gradual disappearance of simple pleasures. More importantly, it reveals how policies designed to protect domestic trade are quietly reshaping the dinner table. Shrimp is no longer just seafood. It's becoming a pricey symbol of lost choice. When was the last time you bought frozen shrimp? Do you remember the feeling of tossing golden shrimp into a sizzling pan and thinking you were investing in a better dinner? If you're hesitating now, you're already feeling the deeply personal impact of national policy. When meat prices spike one item at a time, from a pound of beef to a bag of frozen shrimp. This isn't just about grocery shopping anymore. It's a wake-up call for how out of sync daily life has become for American consumers. The things that once felt automatic now require a calculator and a conversation. The irony tariff policies that promised to protect America are now forcing many American families to give up the very foods that once defined their nutrition and joy. You might not care about politics, but you can absolutely feel that something's off. So what happens if this trend continues? As prices rise, supply chains falter, and shoppers grow more uncertain, you have to ask what everyday staples are next in line to disappear from the dinner plate.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today's analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.